Hello, this is Brittany Byrne. Welcome to some yoga at home. This is going to be a session that's titled Yoga 101. So if you've never experienced yoga before, you're in for a treat. I can't say that it's physical exercise. But what I can tell you is that as I've started this journey with some at-home yoga videos, and then eventually signing up for a certification course and starting that in September, it has 100% changed my entire mindset, the way I react. And even my students will tell you, like, things happen and you're just calm. Yeah, I can pull that from myself because yoga is, well, it has been very much an anchor for me. But what we look to engage, and the goal of yoga is to honor your body, yourself. And so what I can tell you about yoga is that there are two parts to it. One is called asana, okay? And that's the actual movement of the body and placing it into these positions. And we'll go over those traditional positions and what you should expect. But the second part that we want to join is movement with the body and breath. And in doing those two things, we serve really a bigger piece. We are joining body, mind, to honor ourself or our soul, as you see it. And so if you have a hard time meditating and bringing and studying the fluctuations of the mind, yoga offers, I wouldn't call it a distraction, but an outlet for you to have more freedom, I guess you could say, and kind of some control pieces really to what's going on. And so for Yoga 101, what I want to tell you is listen to your body. That's the most important thing. You, even after practicing, my certification is 200 hours and I have 20 more hours to complete here in April before I'm a registered yoga teacher. Even in all of that practice, I don't look like the Instagram yogi. Okay? I am who I am, but yoga has allowed me to accept that, to honor that, and to honestly be impressed with my body. Every time I do yoga, it's of a different extent. And there's some days that I'm like, oh yeah, I can do dancer pose. And then there's another practice and I'm like, I can't stand on one foot today, right? I can't even do this balance pose, let alone have my foot behind my head and have a hold of it. While balancing on the other, of course. And so that's what you need to do. You need to listen and honor to your body. So here's what a typical yoga lesson will look like. What will happen is what's called a grounding piece to begin with. So typically the instructor will have you close your eyes or soften the gaze in front of you. And sometimes this grounding practice, it can be short or long depending on what type of practice you're doing. Maybe something spicy versus a gentle flow. All those things are going to vary in the length of time, but typically it's about 5 to 10 minutes of the practice. And what it is meant to do is to have you check in with your body, number one. Number two is going to be to set an intention for your practice and maybe for something for you to carry throughout, or a mantra for yourself for that day. So that can be as open or as closed as the practice is going to offer. Okay? The other piece to yoga that happens after grounding is, of course, some warm-up, because that's just good, physical exercise 101 to warm your body up. Some will be lying, some will be seated, some will be standing. Okay? We'll eventually work up to it. After that, we go into what we call Sun Salutation A, which really gets the muscles started. It really begins to lubricate that connective tissue. And again, it allows us to check in with our bodies. Where is it at today? What does my body need? After that, there's typically kind of a set or blocks of positions and flows that you'll be guided to via cue. I'll do my best to cue via camera as well as show you what the pose will look like. That should be interesting. Finally, at the end of yoga class, there's a cool down, and then it ends in a practice called Shavasana. Your Shavasana can be as long as or as short as you would like. Just try it. It is kind of like a self-meditative piece, checking back in with your body, checking on your intention or mantra that you set for yourself, or just listening to a final message. It could even end sometimes after Shavasana in a journaling practice as well. Shavasana is usually and typically lying down on your back, grounded, focusing on those grounding points where your body makes contact with the earth, and feeling safe. So feel free to have a pillow or a blanket or anything of that nature and get comfortable. During Shavasana, some great places to put support for a pillow, I know it might seem odd at this time, is really actually behind your knees, and tucking it in there. Typically not behind your head like you were laying in bed, but if that's how you are comfortable to end your practice and honor yourself, please do so. So that's what a basic yoga class is going to look like, and that's what you should expect. Through classes, I'll offer some variations, and you might hear me say, if this is in your practice, try that. Do it, okay? If it's in your practice, if you're comfortable with it. So please, again, honor and listen to your body. So yeah, those are the basics of classes. What type of equipment do you need? Nothing. Just you. We practice in bare feet, again, for safety, to kind of keep ourselves steady and best grip. But if you don't have a yoga mat, don't worry. It can be done on carpet or bare floor. And if you're looking to have a barrier between yourself and the surface, a beach towel is great, okay? Some other things that you might see, this is a meditation cushion. It's comfortable for setting. It helps me hold an actual position with open arms, as well as keeping a chain of energy throughout my spine, setting myself opening up as well, to getting some nice breathing techniques in. Very nice. You can sit on any pillow that you have at home if you find that helpful with meditation, or even at the start of class and grounding. A strap is typically great. You don't have this at home, it's okay. You can use a belt, or most sessions that I'll offer actually won't use a strap at all because nobody has them, okay? And some final other yoga equipment that you might see even in other classes is blocks. Again, you probably don't have them. There is no real substitute to a foam block, but if you do, please feel free to add them to your pose. They are incredibly useful when a pose is not accessible, and it offers support to bring the ground up to you, okay? So if we're in different poses, I'll try not to go into too many different poses, like things like triangle and pyramid, where you're standing and then you're bending and your hand should be reaching the ground. But they can be helpful if you find that you enjoy yoga and you are deepening your practice to actually kind of invest in some blocks. I'm not telling you to go anywhere and get anything. Don't even get on Amazon and order anything. I don't use these when I'm doing general or typical yoga with you guys, because I know that you don't have them. But again, if you're deepening your practice, it might be something that you want to invest in the future. TJ Maxx is a great place for all of these items as well, and cheaply, which is nice. Finally, for yoga and some other things that I want to tell you about in Yoga 101, constantly be checking with your joints. Are my bones stacked? So are my bones stacked in a way that it aligns my joints? Can I safely move into the next pose without really twisting on a weight-bearing joint, on something that is grounded? So again, we'll move from pose to pose. You'll get used to the poses as you continue to practice. I'll give you cues from pose to pose. I'll tend to stay away from some of the Sanskrit names, as That's just an extra layer for you to learn right now. So don't worry too much about that. But again, listen to your body, honor your body. And I'm gonna go ahead and switch the camera to a larger view so you can actually see my full frame. We're gonna work on some standing, showing you some basic poses, how we might tend to move in and out of them, transfer. I will also show you what a sun breath as well as a sun salutation is in this Yoga 101. So kind of get yourself prepared, find a space. And the last thing that I want to tell you, as you practice yoga at home, you will be interrupted. But what I need you to remember is that stay hydrated, come back, make sure that you always warm up. Maybe it's just a couple of sun breaths or a few sun salutations, depending on what level of physicality you'd like to get into. But you can always come back, and we're always here. So I'm looking forward to this journey, so I'm going to kind of switch over to a different view. Okay, for Yoga 101, when I'm cueing or referencing some things to you, I'll be referencing it and pointing things towards certain parts of your mat. And so this is the long edge of your mat, and then this is considered the short edge of your mat. I'll also be talking about kind of the front corners as well. One thing that if you're short on balance is great to do is not standing sometimes with your feet actually hip width apart. You might find more stability in some poses to open them up, maybe shoulder width or further. And so when we get into poses where your actual hips are directionally towards the short end of your mat and you're facing forward, maybe just stepping out towards the outer edge of your mat provides a little bit more stability for you within those positions. So that's kind of the first key to keep in mind. The other thing is keeping sometimes generous bends in our joints, not locking our knees back and in and creating stress. You shouldn't be feeling stress at any time. You will feel fire as you begin to engage your muscles and add in that breathing. Honor your body, don't forget, and stay hydrated. And so what I like to start off with is a basic pose called mountain pose. It's great foundationally starting from the feet up to the head, and it's an incredibly active pose that you look like you're doing nothing. So go ahead and look down at your feet as you're standing here. Your big toes can be together or slightly apart, and if you have a mirror and you look at yourself, this is actually your feet hip width apart. They're much closer than what you would think. Heels can be spread out a little bit, but we don't want to be exaggerated or pigeon-toed. We actually want the knife edge of our feet to be lining up with the short side of our mat. Spreading your toes in this pose is super important. And thinking about the four corners of your feet making contact with the ground is important as well. And so as you inhale, lift your toes, and as you exhale, plant them. Again, a slight bend in your knees. And as we're working our way up, you can feel that energy radiating through your thighs, your glutes, up through your back. Nice, straight, tall, and a humble chin. The arms at your side. Palms can be facing outward or in towards your thighs. Again, this is called mountain pose, and it's a foundational pose. It's so active though, where you're actually wrapping your muscles around the bones, that if I were to come over and push you, maybe just tap you a little bit, you wouldn't be moving, right? You wouldn't fall over. Something else that I do in this pose sometimes is really gauge, thinking about the four corners of each foot. Where am I putting weight in at? Am I slightly forward? Am I back? And so I'll begin to sway to gauge and maybe engage some areas of former injury, like I have an injury to my right foot, of hey, I should be planting more weight there, distributing that and helping to support it. Not to stress or to strain, but really checking in with myself. And so this is called the mountain pose. From here, we can go on to volcano pose by simply bringing our arms up. Shoulders relax down away from the ears, and your back, your shoulder blades should kind of be pulling back and down. Up at your fingers, which mine are out of the actual view for you guys right now, actively. I'm thinking about holding on to a beach ball, like I'm keeping it away from my 4-year-olds or something, like ha ha, okay? But radiating that nice energy up and through the crown. Again, this is called volcano pose. So starting at the ground, nice strong base, moving up through the arms, fingers spread and radiating energy up. From here, if we kind of can sequence these things together, okay? Inhale up to volcano. We call the next move a swan dive that occurs on an exhale. So exhale and swan dive. Into a forward fold. Bend your knees as much as you need. Maybe your hands can touch the ground, bending them generously. Maybe they can't. One thing that I like to do in a forward fold is to grab my opposite elbows. I feel supported. And really, where should I be feeling some release, or maybe sending breath to feel some release? It's going to be across my lower back, and I'm also compressing my abdomen onto my thighs. This is great for digestion, okay? So again, that was volcano, exhale, swan dive, and forward fold. Okay, seeing those positions actually as I'm turned to the side is going to be helpful to see when I say a flat back, kind of what that means. So again, starting from Tadasana, inhale our arms up, exhale, dive forward, forward fold. Inhale to a halfway lift. So this is our next position, and what I want you to notice is I have a flat back here. My knees aren't locked, but I've grown. I've grown vertically as well as horizontally. And I'm radiating energy out from my tailbone all the way through the crown of my head and forward. You'll see in yoga videos, people can reach the ground in a halfway lift. I cannot, okay? You probably won't be able to either, but it's not a big deal. And so in a halfway lift, you can put your hands on your shins or above on your thighs to steady yourself, and really think about getting a figure 7 or a flat back here. And so you can exhale, forward fold. Again, inhaling, exhaling, hands to heart center. So that is a complete round of sun breaths, and they're great for energizing. So you're sitting on a computer and you just stand up, find mountain pose. Inhale, volcano. Exhale, swan dive. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, reverse swan dive. Exhale, hands to heart center. We're going to add to this next and have what we call a sun salutation A. So when we actually go into the forward fold, inhale to halfway lift, and back down to forward fold, we're going to plant into our hands and step back into plank, then baby cobra, eventually pushing up into tabletop and downward dog. Again, these are really some simples, some basics. I'll show you something that's a little bit more advanced, replacing baby cobra with a position called up dog and then going right into down dog. That might be your flow. Maybe you have the muscles, the mechanics that you actually need to get into those positions. But again, this is great for any type of warm-up that you want to do. So say you have to pause your session because you were interrupted, and when you come back to it, it's an hour later. Warming up just through like 2 sun breaths, or especially 2 sun salutations A's, will give you a full body warm-up. So I'm going to start at the top of my mat in Tadasana, and you'll see the same sun breath. Inhale to volcano, exhale swan dive. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, plant your hands. Noticing I have a pretty generous bend in my feet, stepping back into plank. Exhale, lowering to the floor. You can see I'm now planting the tops of my feet in my mat. My hands are spread out right beside my chest, and I'm going to inhale and look forward. This is called a baby cobra. Exhale, back down. We're going to tuck our toes and push up and through till tabletop. Now, tabletop, we want to realign ourselves. So, our bones are stacked. Again, protecting the joints. So if my hands were out forward, this is dumping a lot of stress into my neck and my wrists because my bones aren't necessarily stacked to support myself. So here in tabletop, my wrist, elbow, and shoulder are all lined up. My bones are stacked on top of each other. From tabletop position, we're going to push up and into, just walking our hands out forward slightly, pushing ourselves up and into a position called downward dog, or you'll hear it called inverted V as well. Your heels will not touch. That's okay. You'll hear sometimes some yogis say, hey, this is our first dog of the day, walk it out. This is walking your dog, pedaling your feet, really getting a nice calf stretch. You can bounce your hips back and forth. And believe it or not, as you start to do yoga, it won't feel like it, but that's actually a cooling pose. Why? Your heart and your head alignment. Your head is actually below your heart, which in turn lowers your blood pressure and starts to cool down. At the start of yoga, it's not going to feel like a cooling pose or a resting pose to you. And I'll introduce some basic resting poses in a little bit that'll be more accessible to you if you're just starting out in yoga. And these poses can be taken at any time. And so, from downward dog, to complete our sun salutation, you'll hear the cue. Inhale, come up on your toes, look forward, start shifting your weight forward, walk or hop to the front of your mat for a forward fold. Inhale, volcano, exhale, hands to heart center. So here's what that sun salutation will look like. Basics are starting out for you. Inhale, volcano. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold, planting the hands and stepping back into plank. Lowering down to the mat, planting the tops of our feet, inhaling to baby cobra. Again, if baby cobra is done right, you can lift your hands and you basically really shouldn't be moving much. Pushing into the mat with your hands stresses your wrist and your lower back. Exhale into table. Up into downward dog. Inhale, looking forward, coming up onto our toes, shifting our weight, stepping towards the front of our mat, forward fold. Inhale, volcano. Exhale, hands to heart center. Let's look at the replacement for baby cobra with up dog, as well as pushing right back into downward dog for those that might be a little bit more physically advanced. And so in that sun salutation, I'm at my second forward fold. I plant my hands, stepping back into plank, moving through. This is called chaturanga, and up into upward dog. Planting or curling my toes back in, I can push up and into down dog. A much deeper back bend, a lot more upper body strength needed. Hitting chaturanga, yeah, it's been taking some push-ups, some work. A lot more work than it took to lift twins and carry them around for 4 years. So be patient and kind to yourself. You don't have to do that. Your flow is your flow. There will be time. We will wait for you to get, because typically you'll hear the cue, meet us in down dog. When you're done with your flow, meet us in down dog. Don't forget to breathe. So here's that sun salutation with the advanced positions. Inhale, volcano. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, plant your hands, stepping back into plank, lowering to chaturanga, and up to up dog. Exhale, pushing back into down dog. Inhale, stepping forward. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, exhale, hands to heart center. Give it a try. You're at home, what do you got to lose? Listen to your body. So that is a sun salutation A, as well as a sun breath. Main work for warming up the body. Next is some typical ground or seated positions, usually used for warm up or kind of some transitioning into and out of poses. This is staff pose, sitting up nice and straight. What's it look like? Halfway lift with my feet on the floor, right? If you imagine a floor here, looks a lot like halfway lift. Radiating energy nice and tall. I can reach my arms. I can now do twist, right? As well as easy seat. Okay. We have hero's pose. I'll turn forward so you can see some of these. Okay. This is just a hero's pose. All right. Kind of up. You can also see like a relaxed hero's pose. Another ground piece that I want to introduce to you is tabletop. Stacking your joints. Wrist, elbow, shoulder, knee, hip, flat back. Neutral spine. Having our feet planted, tops of our feet planted on the floor, pretty important as well. Some people prefer to curl toes, stretch out the Achilles. Sure, okay. From here, having your knees about really hip width apart, you can push back and extend, feeling, releasing your shoulders, maybe walking your hands out. This pose is called child's pose. Very important. It's a resting pose. You have a little too much, you hurt something, your body, you just need to relax. This guy is great. An adaptation if you have tight shoulders. Stack your fists like a pillow. Child's pose. Feeling very active through your back. Another child's pose, if you're in tabletop, touch your big toes. Extend your knees out the width of your mat, pressing back into extended child's pose. Much more comfortable, especially if you have some mass that you're dealing with or kind of competing with. You can also stack your hands for a pillow. Okay, or you can feel more engagement by stretching out forward. Your back in child's pose should be what your back looks like. In down dog, this is a warm-up with full engagement to get to here and be comfortable. Those are some typical grounded poses. Other poses that you're going to hear, and then I'll tell you a little bit about transitions into some poses with some flows. Other transitions that you're, or typical poses that you're going to see are the warrior series. And so those can occur from Tadasana. Typically your instructor will tell you to start with a foot forward, stacking, creating, bending the knee and not walking it in. Okay? Again, moving those feet apart so you have more balance, stability. My toe is pointed towards the short edge of my mat. My back toe is actually at a 45, kind of pointing if my mat extended out to the corner of that. Raising my arms and everything facing towards the short end of my mat, and when I say everything, my hips and my shoulders square to the front edge of my mat. This is warrior one. You can step up, step back. Again, checking in. Nice generous bend in the knee, engaging everything that I own here, pointing that toe to a 45-degree corner. Once I have myself grounded and feel stable, lifting, engaging, lighting up, whatever, through my spine to my crown and my head. Warrior one. Another warrior pose that you will hear is warrior two. It's much different. This was closed hip, everything shoulders, hips, towards the short edge of my mat. This is going to be an open hip pose. Different muscle engagement. Same kind of base where I have a knee bent, short edge, my toe pointing towards the short edge of my mat, but now I'm going to open up. And when I do so, the knife edge of that back foot is towards the short edge of my mat. This one I like because, or maybe I should say I liken to surfing, because we open up and we look over that front finger with our gaze. And so what do I want to notice here? That I'm not dumping in with that front knee, right? Okay? I have nice active engagement. It is difficult to have your heels in a line. Walk this guy out for some balance. What do I feel engagement in? Really the back, my hamstring on the front, the quad and the back leg. So as I open up, from here then you can kind of play around, feeling some different stretches as we would move through a flow. Try it on your other side. Again, toes pointing to the short edge of my mat, knife edge towards the short end.
having a nice generous bend in my front knee to support myself, keeping my heels so they're not in line, not dumping in, right? Nice steady base, opening up, looking forward. Again, we'll start adding some movements to create a flow with your breath. So those are some typical warrior poses. There are other warrior poses that are more for balancing. We'll work into those. A balancing pose that I want to teach you is tree pose. So you're starting from mountain, Tadasana. Your toes together. As you inhale, you lift your toes. As you exhale, you feel them plant to the ground. You're mentally engaged in the fact that you have this nice rectangle, equal distribution of weight in your foot. And so as you feel really, really grounded in your left foot, maybe you inhale those toes up and exhale them again, you feel your body's weight really planted. You feel nice and steady. And for tree pose, we're going to turn our knee out on the foot that is not engaged and planted in the ground. And we're going to find some steadiness here. When we start to feel grounded and supported through that root leg, we can bring our leg up. Never supporting it on your knee. That's just bad. It hurts. If this is it, if this is your tree, cool. If this is your tree, nice. Okay? Grow your tree. During balance poses, this is your time to express yourself. Press yourself and smile when you fall out of that balance pose, but come back to it. Maybe we have a couple more breaths to take. Maybe we're transitioning to something else from there. Okay? So these are kind of the things to think about as we move through. Smile and honor your body. So transitioning from pose to pose to pose is good, but think about alignment, how does my body feel, and then breath. One thing that we'll start out with our gentle yoga series here, with our grounding, our first episode in our series that I'd like to work with, is working from Tadasana, engaging in a balance and stepping back into, and maybe readjusting to find a warrior one pose, okay? Or maybe starting from Tadasana, engaging in some balance and landing into a warrior two pose, okay? So these are going to be some gentler transitions. If this is how you get there, right? Maybe a step and a graduation. Really make sure that you have yourself grounded, working from your base, and then adding your arms to it and continuing to breathe. So those are some easier transitions, or maybe even stepping forward and resetting your feet, checking with your base, right? Then adding the top is some really much easier transitions. What I'm going to tell you in this next piece, they call California style. Think about momentum, core engagement, full body engagement, as well as activating the lower piece of your body. And so this is called California style or three-legged dog. So maybe you completed a flow, which is the sun salutation A that I had showed you. Okay, and I say, well, when you're finished with your flow, maybe get a sip of water, come back up into downward dog. We'll all meet there. And so we're meeting in downward dog. Okay, this is called a three-legged dog. Lift your right heel into the air as you inhale. Exhale, bring your foot forward, placing it between your hands. If your foot doesn't get there, add some help. Sometimes from three-legged dog, you might hear the cue and place your hand to the outside. Again, if your foot doesn't get there, add some pieces to it. And then we'll begin with some difference, right? Dropping our heel, feeling balanced, coming up and into warrior two, okay? Frame your foot. So that is considered a three-legged dog when you're coming up into the air and then you're working through. Please notice, your sides of your body will be different. Everyone's is. That's okay. Every day is different. That's okay as well. And so these are called a three-legged dog. Lifting up and in. Sometimes you'll hear stack your hips. That's for a hip opening class. Again, be mindful, respect your body, listen to your body. So those are some typical transitions to working into other poses. How you get there is how you get there. Just be safe about it and keep your joints in mind. So these are really some basic poses, like I said, that we'll be moving through. I'll be cueing you for other poses to help you engage in them and know what the alignment is. And so stick with it, breathe with me, be with me, and most importantly, be well.